It's a family reunion or something?
We're planning such.
Oh.
Even more so.
I'm trying to figure out what we're doing for lunch because we want tomorrow's lunch. So I wanted to know before I went live.
So I was considering. Did you pay? But at least I can't read it this morning.
Good luck.
Put a quarter of the
They rearranged it here all night.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Yes, we're done.
No, I put 150 miles on this. All my we had a Nolan wheel rider. North Mountain Road. I got a pastor sheet about the back. That was the best part of Ocean. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There's road before seafood. Yeah, we did a nice long trip. We were like 5 hours. Oh no, he's probably faster than I am. This thing go fast. I'm not it'll go over 100. Well, you gotta do the work afterwards. You gotta be up on it, walking around and do this. If you don't have muscle power and all that, you know, of course you stir it extra weight, it's hard. Right. Next one. Yeah, I had not planned on that tomorrow. Told you you're on there.
You looking for more light?
Side light, yeah.
Yeah, I think one of these switches over.
Oh.
Trying to figure out.
Yeah. Count the acid.
No, just wishing I won something. What I would do is as long as you got the truck, my wife goes like, I said, first off, she goes,
Well, yeah.
You were doing something else?
Yeah, we got something to do.
It's in my calendar.
Okay, we are in Joshua 7. So just fire up your devices, turn in your Bibles, whatever it is you do. And let's get ready to go. Our quarter ends this month. So we have to do a little bit of pushing to get through Joshua, but that's okay. We have time to do that, especially given the next the next chapter is about the division of the land. That can get to be a real sleeper. So we're going to blaze through those chapters real quick. But otherwise, we've got some business to take care of here in the latter part of Joshua. We're consolidating the land, getting our battle plans done, etc., etc., etc. So we're going to go through that. Before we really get started, are you going to adjust me there, James? Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. Before we get started, we certainly want to pray together and to thank the Lord for what He's done for us. And He is doing for us. Father, we are grateful. Lord, we look around and we're just so blessed. We just, an abundance, an embarrassment of riches, to fresh running water in our houses, to the money in our bank account, to you name it. You blessed us richly. We're grateful. And as if all that wasn't enough, you have given us your beautiful creation. And if that wasn't enough, you've given us your Son and your Spirit as your great gifts to humanity. We're grateful. We know, Father, there are some who are really struggling and wrestling right now with difficulties, issues, and situations. Bless them, Father. And help us to be an encouragement and comfort to them as you have been to us. In Jesus' name. Okay, chapter 7. We had a really nasty situation. These children of Israel did not act faithfully in the banned things, and so they went up against Ai, and with a small contingent, and they were whooped all the way down to the to the city gate. So we're all the way down to the what do they call it? You know what they call it. And Joshua is as extreme about it. He said, why this happened? It is catastrophic. The people's hearts melting in fear, just like the people around them. And so they have a trial, as you will. Yahweh picks the guilty party. They stone Achan and his family, and burn Achan and pile of stones over him. And Yahweh's anger is averted. Now he is with them and blessing them. The Lord turns from his fierce anger. That brings us to chapter 8, which is where we are. Yahweh has a battle plan, and so he is blessing them once again. He is with them. He is now back with them in full fellowship, if you will. And so Yahweh has said, I'm going to be commander, I'm with you, I'm blessing you. And he says, I have delivered the king, his city, his land, everything into your hand. And you just look at this and it's kind of, there's this restoration of fellowship and of love and of care in that. And so he says, you go up against I, and Joshua does. Chooses 30,000 of his men. He says, we're going to pull off an ambush. This is Yahweh's battle plan. This is not something Joshua has cooked up or dreamed up. This is what Yahweh has told Joshua to do. He says, I want you guys to hide behind the city. I'm going to take a contingent up front. The people are going to open up the gates. We're going to run away. We're going to beat them just like we did the last time. You be on the alert. Once they do, once they chase us, I'll give the signal. You guys come out. Burn the city, destroy everything in it, and we'll fight. The Lord your God will give it into your hand. Yahweh is going to bless us with the victory. And so, they'll pursue us. When you've taken the city, set it on fire, notice once again this emphasis, this little push. Do what Yahweh has said. Following Yahweh. Yahweh's the leader. Do what he says. See to it, you have my orders. Now, that's the way Joshua has kind of picked up on this. If you look at the very first part of this little discourse, he says, listen carefully. You know, when the general says, listen carefully, what do? You listen carefully. And he says, you have my orders. See that you do it. We're going to do this. And guess what happens? Has anybody read ahead? You know what happened? Happened just like Joshua said. He goes to the front of the city with his contingent. The men of Ai come out. They start fighting. The Israelites start running away. And the men of Ai think, they're doing it again. And so it's really intriguing as you read this. They run out of the city and they leave the gates open. All the warriors run out of the city and chase Joshua. The city is completely defenseless. You think, how? Why would you guys do that? That's dumb. Are we excited? Are we exuberant? Are we overconfident? Yes, yes, yes. All the above. And so Joshua's ambush works. Yahweh tells Joshua, you hold out your javelin toward Ai. As you do it, I will give you victory. The men of Ai look back, and what do they see? A huge smoke plume. This thing has not gone like they had planned. The Israelites all of a sudden turn when they see Joshua giving the command. And the Israelites come back for them. And then in a pincher movement, all you military guys know about the pincher movement, right? The contingent from the back comes forward. The men of Ai have no place to go. And they are slaughtered. Joshua tells them to go back and finish up the job. 12,000 men and women are destroyed that day. Here's a significant difference. Yahweh has told them, you can take the plunder from the city. Correct.
Why did he change his mind about taking something out of here?
Okay, why did he change his mind as from Jericho to now? As far as the plunder?
Right.
Right. My sense or understanding is that Jericho is the first fruits. It belongs to Yahweh. Everything in it. We're going across, just like the firstborn is Yahweh's, of cattle, whatever, the first fruits of the ground is Yahweh's. And so now the first fruits of the destruction of Canaan is Yahweh's. It's to go into his treasure. Then after that, he said, the rest of it is yours. That's the only thing that I can think of. First, it's just me.
When I was a child, this used to bother me because it said the men and women. And I asked my mother, why would God allow the women, children, all that? And she said it's because the children are gonna grow up just like the parents. They're gonna feel just like them. And that made me, think twice on that subject, but it worried me as a child.
It worries me as an adult. I still have a little trouble with that. And I think our culture has trouble. We talked about that several weeks ago. It's a very difficult subject. They took the king alive. Okay? And what Yahweh said? I have delivered into your hands the king, his people, his city, his man. Who did he give to Joshua? Joshua burned the eye. And you impaled the king on a pole. Now that's just cute, isn't it? And it's like then, when you're before the setting of the sun, he takes him down, he buries him, and they put a pile of rocks over it. Once again, we have the kind of this memorial. What is this thing about, hanging the king on a pole, on a tree? That's just kind of thinking, don't you think? Until you look back in the book of Deuteronomy and you read this. If somebody is guilty of capital punishment and you're put to death and their body is exposed on a pole, don't leave it overnight. Notice that the punishment, the curse, is not to be put on the pole. Exactly. It's because they're already in the curse. Be sure to bury the same day. The person is under God's curse. You must not desecrate the land by leaving it overnight. So there are a couple of different things happening here. There is this idea of capital punishment, but also of the curse that's on the entire land. The king is representative of the people, is representative of the curse, and as such he is hung on the pole. Joshua, according to the book of Deuteronomy, takes him down at night, before night, and buries him. Does that ring a little bell from you, from the New Testament? Like in Galatians 3. Well, Paul says, you need to be sure to understand this, and this is Harvey Hearn's paraphrase version. You need to be sure to understand this, and no one is justified by works of the law, because everyone who tries to do that is under a curse, because cursed is everyone who does not do everything written in the law. And that means who? However, he goes on to say, Jesus became for us a curse, to redeem those under the curse of the law. As it is written, everyone who is hanged on a pole, or a tree, or a cross, is under a curse. Yeah.
Getting back to the neighbor, some of the things that he did, God did that, we would have a problem understanding. Under Christ, giving us we're trying to do our best, but we do fall down the face from time to time. We could just back up and try to deal with and deal with this and this that. We do said English. We see in some way, some fashion the other day. A lot of times we don't even know what we're not seeing, but the fact is that we're saved by grace through faith. God's law today. It seems to me that is as long as I'm trying, that I'm in safe and harm, and that I have a place in this feeling. My life, when my time comes, to give up this mortal body that I have, because I can be immortal and just my kingdom, So I'm like you said it before you can understand. Sometimes I don't understand it myself.
Well, and we need to remember too that while grace came by Jesus Christ, but there is a certain element of grace in the Old Testament. In fact, Yahweh would even condescend to choose Abraham, to choose Israel, to give them his law, to forgive them when they sin, provide the altar, blood, as Mark mentioned this morning, the blood of the sacrifice. So there's grace, even under this regime. And now we're right here in the middle of this war. We're mopping up an eye. We're having the victory celebration. We're dividing the spoils. Everything's going on. And then the writer of the book of Joshua does one of these hiatuses on us. He said, well, let's pause a minute. And if you remember, he did this back in chapter 4 when he talked about the interlude of stones. We have the people crossing the Jordan River. We have the priest standing in the middle, and all of a sudden the Jewish Joshua writer says, well, I need to tell you about these rocks. And also the battle before Jericho. We're getting ready to go over and strike Jericho, and all of a sudden he says, wait a minute, I need to tell you about Joshua's meeting with the commander of the army of the Lord. And so once again, this guy does this to us. We're right here on the heels of Ai, and there's about to be some pretty serious political ramifications from that. And the Joshua writer says, let me tell you about Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. What? This is a big pause. And so we're going to look at these two mountains, Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. Gerizim is the mountain of blessings. Ebal is the mountain of curses. Right here is the city of Shechem. So what you need to know is that you're going to be thinking, how can they hear each other? I mean, we've got, several 100,000 people, and they're both on the sides of the mountains, and they're yelling back and forth. Can they hear each other? Yes, they could. This thing is about 1 mile, about 500 feet across here, 1 mile across the top. It's a natural amphitheater, as they say, where they're going to go there. And by the way, the ancients were able to do this, and Yahweh is able to do this. Give his people a natural amphitheater. Shechem is at the front. And so as the Israelites are coming through, this is important for several reasons. We'll get to Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim in just a minute, but Shechem, that rings a bell, right? Yes, indeed it does. This is where Abraham made his first offer to Yahweh. This is where Jacob is fleeing from Laban. This is where Joseph goes to look for his brothers before he is sold into slavery. Shechem is a serious city, a lot of history to these people. More important, Ebal and Gerizim about to have some real significance to these people as they fulfill the covenant. Then Joshua does this. He went to Mount Ebal. Altar of uncut stones on which no iron tool had been used. Field stones. Just regular old stuff that you find when you plow in your field and it's away. And then they offered the Lord burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Burnt offerings are for atonement. Fellowship offerings, however, are thanksgiving. And the worshiper eats part of the offering. This is significant because Yahweh is the host of this sacrifice, and he invites the worshipers to eat with him. You can find several references to this in the Old Testament, but I want you to consider carefully what this means. They are able to sit there in fellowship with Yahweh based on his graciousness and goodness to them. You cannot help but think that as you and I take the Lord's Supper every Sunday, we're participants in a very similar sort of meal, a very similar kind of fellowship offering, in which the Lord is our host. He is there with us as we eat the bread and drink the cup. And sometimes we do it pretty quick, and sometimes we do it not thinking very clearly, or we're distracted. That is where the Lord meets us. He's with us as our gracious host within the fellowship offering. In the presence of the Israelites, he writes the law on some stone, on the stones of cotton of Moses. Everybody's there. The elders, the priests, the people, the great, the small, the women, the children. Everybody is participating in this event. Half the people stood on Mount Gerizim, half stood on Mount Ebal, and they begin to go back and forth, the blessings and the cursings. Where did we get that from? Moses. Remember Moses? Yes, indeed you do. That's, by the way, the real Moses. We all know who the real Moses is. There will never be another Moses like him. Deuteronomy 27 and 28. There is this pre-command almost. Moses is saying, you guys are going to go over and you're going to inherit the land. You're going to get what Yahweh has promised. Now, when you get over there, here's what you need to do. You go to Ebal and you Gerizim. When you cross the Jordan into the land, Yahweh, you set up large stones and coat them with plaster. Write on them the words of this law when you crossed over. Set the stones up on Mount Ebal, as I command you today, and coat them with plaster. Well, what did Joshua do? Got stones of the law in the presence of all the people. Build there an altar to Yahweh your God, and offer stones. Don't use any iron tool on them. Offer the burnt offerings and the fellowship offerings, sacrifice fellowship offerings. They're eating them and rejoicing in the presence of Yahweh. Oh, and so what do? Build the altar for the stones. Make the sacrifices and the fellowship offerings. Write very clearly the words of these laws on the stone. When you cross the Jordan, these tribes will stand on Mount Gerizim to bless the people of Israel. These will stand inside Mount Ebal to read the curses. Now, if you go back and read in Deuteronomy 27, 28, we're not going to have a whole lot of time to do this. There are some tremendous curses. God says you are going to be fearful. You are not going to have enough to eat. Your crops, your herds aren't going to produce. Your children aren't going to produce. You're not going to eat this. You are going to be a mess. However, if you follow the words of this law, the very opposite is going to happen. The blessings. And so, the priests would read out the blessings, and the people would say, Amen. They read out the curses and the blessings, and in each turn they would say, Yes, we accept. And so there is this huge reaffirmation of the covenant. This is what Yahweh is promising you. Here is what his expectations are. Here's what's going to happen if you do, and here's what's going to happen if you don't. Again, this kind of goes back to the concept of covenant. A treaty, almost, if you will. Where Yahweh promises to do this, and people promise to do this. If you read the blessings and curses, and as you read in the subsequent studies of Judges and Samuel and Kings, man, it just nails it down. It's like, okay, Moses knew, Yahweh knew what they were going to do. Afterward, Joshua read all the words of the law, the blessings and the cursings, and it says there was not a word of all that Moses commanded that Joshua did not read, including women and children and the foreigners who lived among them. What foreigners is there? Well, you got Rahab. And there's some people they didn't conquer. Egyptian. Oh, yeah. There were some Egyptians and other foreigners who followed them out on the Exodus, who wanted to be and who were a part of Israel. Everybody heard this. Everybody now knows. This is what God is. Any questions or comments? I find that just so totally fascinating. And it's so interesting that Joshua does everything exactly as Yahweh has commanded through his servant Moses. Oh, you're going to like this. Archaeologists have found a Mount Ebal curse text from about 1200, and it mentions the name of Nephilim. And so it's kind of like saying, and it's made out of lead, by the way, folded over. And it's kind of like, wow. it's almost like the people have continued to remember this, or maybe this is part of the thing of Joshua's time. And then, of course, what you do is you have all the scholars coming in, and there's someone says, we have found a curse text from this time period from evil. And other scholars are saying, no, you didn't. So I just throw this out here for your interest. In the late Bronze Age, depending on how you date the Exodus, it could be around the time of Joshua. What's interesting is in the text, you don't see Yahweh's name. I think it's intriguing. It's found this year, and time will tell whether or not it's good. Ooh, chapter 9. The fighting is about to begin. When all the kings west of the Jordan heard about these things, the kings of the hill country, western foothills, Mediterranean Sea, I mean, everybody's hearing about this. What are they hearing? They've heard about Yahweh's Exodus. They've heard about Sihon and Og, or Rahab. They have found out about them crossing over the Jordan. They've seen the destruction of Jericho. Now they've heard about Ai. And now they're thinking, we're going to have to do something. This is getting bad. And so you see the legend there. You have the Hittites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, all the Rites and Tites, all around in this area. The western foothills along the eastern coast of the Mediterranean, all in here. This great coalition is about to gather together against Joshua, who is camping now at Gilgal. About to get serious. But once again, our writer takes us on Egypt. Stinking, sneaky Gibeonites. Don't you just dislike them? Okay. We crossed the Jordan, we've taken Jericho, we're camping at Gilgal, and now we've taken Ai. Here is Gibeon. If you're part of this Hivites, Hittites, Jebusites, and all the Hites and Tites, and you're hearing this, and you're responsible for your people, what are you going to be thinking? Folks, we have a problem. We've heard what Yahweh has commanded, and we've heard the situations. We've got to do something. Now, we've got this coalition arising up. Johnny Zedek, we'll read about him in chapter 10. He's pulling us all together. We war. Maybe there's another way. When the people of Gibeon heard about Ai and Jericho, they resorted to a ruse. So they got their heads together and said, guys, what if instead of fighting head on, and we know how that's going to end, or how it looks like it's going to end, what if we make a treaty with him? Well, we can't make a treaty with him. Yahweh says don't make a treaty with him. Yeah, but what if we treat him? And so, they got old wineskins. They got moldy bread. They got worn out shoes. I mean, these shoes aren't even thrift smart shoes. I mean, they're just got their donkeys, and they go talk to the Israelites. All the bread was dry, moldy. And they come to Joshua and Gilgal and say, make a treaty with us. We're from a far country. This bread was warm when we took it out of the ovens and packed it up. Our wineskins were fresh, our shoes were good, everything was happy, and we make a treaty with us. And Joshua said, maybe I'll be lying. That's in the Hebrew when he says it like that. This was the way you live in your house, and how do we make a treaty? Well, your servants say to Joshua, and Joshua says, well, who are you, and where do you come from? And they go around about, as you would and I would do. And then there's this, a sample of their provisions. This bread is moldy, this stuff nasty. And then here's the real key part. But they did not inquire of Yahweh. After all the battles that Yahweh has led them through, after all the situations He's done for them in the Jordan River, after giving Jericho to them, after no fight at all practical, irresponsible or I mean, the priests are right there. The ark is right there. So Joshua made a treaty with the Gibeonites. They're not far from here. And the leaders ratified by oath. Now, what do you do when you swear by Yahweh that you're going to do something? And then, oh no, we can't kill them now. They pack up, they go and see the Gibeonites, they find out that they're living near them. So what do you do? I mean, how are you going to deal with this? We can't kill them. We swore by Yahweh we weren't going to do this. Folks, everybody's going to get costed on this deal. The Gibeonites are going to have problems. The Israelites are going to have problems. This whole thing is going to be a mess. Because we did not inquire. Parenthetically, you kind of got to hand it to the Gibeonites. This was pretty stinking crazy, you know? I mean, they had to, I guess, we'll find a way through it. All right, so what are we going to do? By the way, if you read in the text, it says that the people begin to grumble against their leaders. We haven't seen this since Moses' time. You guys have led us into a mess. We can't obey Yahweh's command to destroy the whole civilization because you've promised them we're going to let them live, and yet, well, here's what we'll do. We'll let them live. So God's wrath will fall. But from here on out, you're going to cut our wood, you're going to haul our water, you're going to do it for everybody, and later on you're going to do it for the temple service. Why'd you guys do this? We feared for our lives. We heard about what Yahweh did. So we made this deal. We will do this whatever seems to be right. Oh, yuck. Some see some parallels to Rahab here. I know you probably don't care because the Gibeonites are sitting there and they're just lying through their teeth. But what did Rahab do? She lied through her teeth. She knew the history. The Gibeonites knew the history. She professed Yahweh. They used Yahweh's name. We've heard what Yahweh has done. And through the fear of Yahweh, we come to you, they said. She betrayed her culture. They betrayed their culture. They didn't align themselves with the coalition that's about him. They lied. She lied. They lied. Big time lied. She was incorporated into Israel. What you don't know unless you do look a little concordant searches, you can think about the Gibeonites for centuries. They fulfilled their slave service. But then you start reading in David's mighty men. And who do you have but a Gibeonite? And you read after the Israelites come back from captivity in the Chronicles of Nehemiah. And who do you have? Gibeonites. Who do you find rebuilding Nehemiah's wall? The Gibeonites were ultimately incorporated into Israel's culture and history, just as Rahab was. Take a while. The story is not going to be over for another 200 years, 200 plus years. Later you'll read, well, in just a few chapters, you're going to read, there's a thing with this treaty and you guys are going to have to protect it. Second, Saul tried to destroy the Gibeonites. He became king. As a result, there was a famine on the land in David's time. And David had to take some pretty severe and nasty measures to rectify that curse. But in the meantime, we got a war to fight. Let's move on from this nasty Gibeonite mess. So we did. This brings us now to chapter 10. Now, Adonizedek, let's just read our text just a minute. Now, Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, that Joshua had taken Ai and totally destroyed him, doing to Ai and to its king, as he had done to Jericho and its king, and that the people of Gibeon had made a treaty of peace with Israel and were living near them, and he and his people were very much alarmed at this because Gibeon was an important city, like one of the royal cities. It was larger than Ai, and all its men were good fighters. So we have this alliance and this coalition by Gibeon, big city. Remember Joshua saying it wasn't a very big city, it wasn't very powerful. But now, Ai is prominent, and men are good fighters. So, Zedek, king of Jerusalem, Hoham, all these other kings come up and tell me to attack Gibeon because it has made peace with Joshua and the Israelites. Verse 6, the Gibeonites then sent word to Joshua and the camp of Gilgal, do not abandon your servants. We're about to get beat up on. You made a treaty. Now rescue us. Just look at Joshua and think, oh man, what have I done? And that's where we'll begin next week at the Coalition of Kings. Basically, the beginning and end of the central campaign for Israel. Any questions, comments, or thoughts?